Hey, welcome to American Reversion. I'm Steve Smith, and welcome also to the Patreon channel of Integrative Preparedness. I'm going to put this over there too. Probably won't put it on Integrative Preparedness YouTube because it has more to do, not just with preparedness, but with the political atmosphere we find ourselves in now, and what I think we need to be doing about it. While I was thinking about what I should call this one today, I got a text message from a friend of mine, Real World Prepper. If y'all don't follow him, I suggest that you do. Just put up in the search bar in YouTube Real World Prepper, and that'll take you to him. He's a smart guy, a thoughtful guy, and a guy that you will probably be interested to hear what he has to say, especially going forward. Anyway, he told me that he and his wife had watched Agenda 1 and Agenda 2 last night. I, I, I forget if he said he found it on Amazon Prime or on YouTube. There's been a couple of comments over on Patreon because I think I put that over on Patreon, saying that they found that they were able to find it on YouTube. So that's great. Thank you for your input on that. So you can find it there. But I do suggest that everybody have a hard copy of this, so you can invite friends over to watch it, and invite another group of friends over to watch it, and get more and more people introduced to really the history of the communist movement in our country, how it has been planned out, and how it is currently coming to fruition. We should all be well versed in that so that we're able to communicate effectively to those around us, and try to persuade more people over to our side. That's the only peaceful way to come out the other end on this stuff. And anyway, my response to him made me realize, or brought to mind, what I should call this, and that is buckle up and buckle down. What we can and need to be doing while we navigate a bumpy road ahead of us. That whole thing didn't come as an idea for a title. I don't know if I'll put all that down, or even if I'll remember it by the time it comes to put the title up. But that's really what we need to be doing. I want to answer a couple of questions here that lead me into this, and then I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about. I've had several people ask me, do I think there's really a chance that we can pull our country out of this decline it's going in? And then I've had other people ask, because they've heard me say that I think this country is over. They say, well, if you think it's over, then why fight? What's the point of it? Okay. Let me take that one first. I do think that very possibly the United States of America is over with. It's in its final decline in its current form. Okay. It's been an interesting run. It's been a great run. I'm right up there with those who say that the United States of America is the best country that in the world, probably the best country that's ever been. I say country, not nation. I made one a long time ago. I don't believe that the United States was ever a nation. There's reasons for that. I'll make another one on that. But as a country, it has been it has been used by God to do a great deal of good in the world, and provide a great deal of freedom to a great many people. And I know all the other arguments. Well, it didn't provide freedom for everyone. Yes, I know. I'm sorry we don't live in perfection, but the United States has been the greatest thing, in my opinion, in history so far. Maybe there'll be something better at the other end of this. So I think, even though I think it's over, I don't think that you stop fighting. If when I was in sports, hey, I was on a couple of lousy teams, but it's in the eighth and the ninth inning, and you're way down. you don't just go home. You know, you get out there and you do everything you can, even though you don't think there's any chance of it coming back. And I don't really remember, but if you've watched Joe Montana and you watched the Kansas City Chiefs a couple of times here lately, I'm not a big fan of sports, but I know they've done good job. Montana and Elway and the Chiefs last season and maybe this season, we'll see. You think you're way down and all of a sudden it turns around. So I don't believe in stopping. Okay? It may look like it's over, but I can't see the future, and neither can anybody else, and that's just my personal feeling that I will not stop fighting. Why I say to continue to involve ourselves in the competition here is that even if we don't win this round, there's another round coming. And when that next round starts, I want to have our side strengthened as much as possible and the other side weakened as much as possible. And the way to do that is through influencing people. Okay, now I'm going to get back to that in a minute. Then another person yesterday asked, how do I suggest we do this? And he made it clear that he believed in prayer, and he was a praying person, and that is great because I think that's the first thing you do. You pray, and you pray hard, and you pray harder than you ever have before, and you pray more. God does things that we not only can't, I mean, obviously, right? We can do very little on our own. He does things that we can't, and he does things in a way we would never even imagine. It's happened in my life multiple times. Probably has in yours too. And he does it in ways that we couldn't even imagine, and brings things out in ways that are so far better than we ever even would have hoped for. Okay, that has happened so often in my life, and so that's where I put my faith. And so I believe that it can happen. Now, I believe that it's going to be the will of God, and to the extent that he wants us to participate in it, we should. So that's where I stand on that. Now, how we want to approach this is not by doing things, in my opinion, like the unfortunate demonstration up in Washington, D.C., and I'll tell you why. Okay. It cost us a lot. It cost the right, the patriots, whatever you want to, however you want to categorize those of us who believe in, the American foundational principles, the Constitution, the Declaration. It cost us a lot in the war of ideas and influence, and I don't care. You can say that they were all well intentioned. I believe that they were, except for the ones who, obviously the interlopers who caused the problems. I get it, but being smart, being right is one thing. Being smart while you're right is what it takes. Let me give you an example. Organized crime in the United States had a lock on a lot of what was going on in the country from the very early 1900s. Now, everybody thinks about organized crime as being mainly Italian. There was organized crime here far before Italians ever came here. But that's what we'll talk about right now. They had a lock on so much. It didn't start out that way. It started off very small group of immigrants trying to take care of themselves. And these were people who had been oppressed by their government, repeated governments, repeated occupiers for years and centuries in Sicily. And they knew that they needed to be able to take care of themselves. And when they came to the United States, that's exactly what they did. They stayed to each other. They took care of themselves. They handled their own problems. And then they realized in order to truly be safe, they needed to be able to have influence over the greater world around them. That means the legal system, the justice system, the political system. And they followed the Irish in this. The Irish had already established a foothold in politics, and really, they were organized crime. Um, so the Italians kind of came on the heels. The Irish really established so many of the machine towns. If you go back to, the big towns, New York, Boston, Philly, all of those, and here in Kansas City. Kansas City was a big machine town under Jim and Tom Pendergast. And really, those were nothing more than organized crime, but that term didn't come around till later. Um, and what they were, as they went outside of the system in order to have political influence. Okay, if we go back to the Irish, and then I'll come back to the Italians in a minute, because there are lessons in both of those. How did the Irish establish themselves so solidly in politics and still there today? Okay, well, there's a movie, was it Gangs of New York? I don't remember liking the movie a lot. I only saw it when it came out. I don't remember liking it a lot. I have a hard time taking Leonardo DiCaprio seriously as an adult. But he's trying to play a tough part. He's not a tough guy. But there were some good lessons in there. It showed how the Irish were coming in, and what happened as a result. How they built up their political power was these were people who were coming into a new country. Many of them couldn't speak the language over here because many of them were still speaking a type of Gaeilge, and they had no jobs, nobody waiting for them, no work to do, nothing, right? And except they get off the boat, a coffin ship or a prison ship or whatever, and they get off the boat and they're looking around. And, a guy's got his wife and 2 kids with him, or 5 kids, or whatever. Doesn't know what he's going to do that night to get in there to eat or where he's going to stay. And here's this guy, standing up there in a fancy suit. And he says, here's $5. Here's a place for you. Here's an address. You go to this place and you tell them that you give them this note. And they'll have a room for you and your family. And tomorrow morning you show up here. And there's a job waiting for you, and they're going to be able to, you're going to be able to support your family. And whenever there's an election, you just ask us and we'll tell you who to vote for. Okay? Simple as that. That's how political power was established. Okay? And it was strong. It was strong here in the United States through the 80s. To an extent, it has shifted over to other things. But the mob or organized crime or the Irish, they put people in a lot of offices. They put people in the political system of this country for a long time. They put Truman in, they put Kennedy in, okay, and they put others in. There is a lesson, and they did that. And they did it mainly with the Democrat Party because the Democrat Party was always more, the working man and supporting the downtrodden and everything like that. And to be honest, it was the Democrat Party was full of the less educated people. Back then, the Republicans were mainly the industrialists and the more well-off people. You can't get somebody like that to vote a certain, well, they can now, but that's different. So that's why they really built their power on these immigrant groups, on the people that didn't have a lot. And they did very well because they remained beneath the surface. They also owned they owned the politicians, they owned the police, they owned the courts, and they owned the press to a great extent because through their advertising, through their influence over the editors and the publishers, they were the ones that could call a strike on a newspaper if they didn't like what a newspaper was saying, right? Okay. The Italians were much the same. Okay, if you watch the Godfather and 1 and 2 were great movies. It really explained a lot about how these things can work. And the towns, I'll tell you right off, back when they were run by the outfit, they were a lot safer and a lot better off, and they ran a lot better, and you didn't have potholes all over the place, and you didn't have crime all over the place until politicians took over. I mean, politicians who thought that they were doing it on their own. When the Italians, like I said, they always kept it underneath, and here's our lesson. A guy by the name of Joe Colombo, he was the head of the Colombo family in New York, and he started something called, I'm trying to think, it was the Italian American Civil Rights League. This was like in the early 70s, maybe 1970, 71, something like that. And he he got mad over some arrests of some Italians, and so he decided to go public. He developed this Italian American Civil Rights League and started demonstrating. And if I don't remember who it was his son, his brother, somebody was arrested by the FBI for melting down coins or something. Forget the exact situation. Anyway, he got mad and he started picketing the FBI headquarters. Well, that, of course, brought a lot of heat and a lot of attention, not just on him, which got him shot a few years later, and then he lived for a while as an invalid. But it brought heat down and a attention on the mafia. All of a sudden, their influence started to dwindle, because while they had a lot of influence when nobody was seeing it, the politicians didn't want to be as close to them if they thought that newspapers were going to start writing about them and more people were going to start writing about them, and the FBI, now their attention was on them, and the power of the government now was directed toward them. Bobby Kennedy had tried this years before, didn't really amount to much. Even J. Edgar Hoover never admitted for the I don't know if he ever admitted before he died that there was such a thing as organized crime, because he knew that there was no way that they could get him. Okay, he wanted to concentrate on auto theft because that was an easy crime to solve and it made the FBI look good. But he never admitted, or he never wanted to admit, that there was such a thing as organized crime, because it was underneath. It had a lot of influence. It decided who was put in as aldermen or councilmen or representatives or vice presidents or presidents. But now that the light had been shined on them and too much public attention was directed their way, it got harder and harder and harder, because the media started making them look bad. It's just as simple as that, and it drew the media attention, it drew the law enforcement attention, it drew government attention, and then it lost the support of the people, and it did have the support of a lot of people. What happened up in Washington, D.C. was almost exactly like that. I'm not faulting anybody who went up there, because I think that there were a lot of well-intentioned people that wanted to show. We knew that this election was fraudulent. We knew it was stolen. Okay, but by going up there, it set the perfect scene for exactly what happened. Okay, and now the movement has been set back. Who knows how much, but drastically. Okay, that kind of stuff may feel good, and it can be compared, and people will say, well, you got to stand up now. I've addressed that already, and we look back to the Boston Tea Party and the civil rights riots and all this kind of stuff. That does not serve our purpose well, and it sets us up for first off, they didn't really accomplish anything except feeling good about being there. Okay? Again, I'm not slamming anybody who was there, But I'm saying it is time to get real and start concentrating on having real results. And the real result of that was negative. So let's now start thinking about what the real results can be if they're positive. Okay. If all of those people who went up to Washington gave as much money as they probably spent for that trip and their guns and their plate carriers and everything else, if they gave that money to people running for office, okay, who upheld constitutional values, we would be able to put more constitutionalists and patriots in elected positions, from county councils to city councils to state legislatures to the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate and the President. If everybody who is out there would do that and contribute their time and their money and the energy that they take, if they would put that into supporting elected officials and primarying and working against those who work against us, we would start to have more influence. Now, a lot of people don't want to hear that. A lot of people, that doesn't sound very flashy. That doesn't sound very sexy. It's so much flashier and sexier to get all dressed up and go carry flags and go make noise. And then you really feel good about it. And you go home and you got some selfies and you say, look what we did. Well, I'll tell you what, you get a lot more done with quiet, hard work and financing and staying under the table. You get a lot more done. Okay, so whatever's happened up till now is done. It's time for serious work. For people who really want to do the serious work, and I think there's a lot of people that aren't going to do this, that who are more than happy to go out there and protest, but they won't get down and do the serious work that takes daily energy and takes money. Okay, you have to. We have to. If there is a political group in your area that you can join that reflects your values, join it. If there's not, start one. Start one with your family. Start one with your friends. Start one, pull more people into it. Finance. You don't have to run for office yourself. Find somebody who reflects your values. Support them. Have meetings for them. Right now, people, I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to be throwing up their hands and said, politics doesn't work. It doesn't work. You're well, let me tell you. Let me say to you what you have said to people like me, and that is, you're not willing to be a part of the solution. You're part of the problem. Okay, it is not. Now, if people are just so disgusted with politics, I understand that. I understand that completely. And if you just want nothing to do with it, I'm sorry, because it would be much better if you would have something to do with it. If you would be a part of the solution. If you would go out there and try to influence people around you, because it can be done. Okay, I have done it more times than I can tell you. I might have a couple of people over here and do a video with me who will help me explain this, because they're people, well, it doesn't matter. Maybe I'll do that. But this is what has to be done on the way forward. We got to buckle down. We've got to buckle up and buckle down. Okay, let's stay in the fight. Stay with the program. Stay on point on this. Or do you just want to go home? Okay, or you just want to complain to each other, to other people who feel the same way you do. I still see posts online that people who were convinced that Q was going to save them the other day. Now the plan is 30 days from now. Oh, it's all going to happen 30. It's not going to happen, okay? How about if you take all of that energy and form a group or support a group that will actually have political influence? Better to own a politician than be a politician, okay? Now that sounds pretty, I know that sounds pretty coarse, pretty crude. But all that means is that you have an influence over a politician. If you've got a group with 100 people in it, and each one of those people, instead of buying another gun or a plate carrier or something like that, can say, you know what, I will contribute $200 to a campaign of somebody who supports us. Do you think that if you have a meeting with a person who's running for office and you can show your political power, not just in votes but in money, that they won't listen? They will. Now, if the other side has more money and more votes, they will win out. But our purpose is to build more and more and more. And if people aren't willing to do that, then they're not willing to be a part of the solution. They just want to sit back and whine and complain and cry, I guess, as the plane goes down. This is why I think. Now, I don't know if we'll be able to pull this out, but if we are, this is how we do it. This is how I would suggest you do it. Stop putting the energy into the complaining and trying to prove how, coming up with one more piece of evidence on how the election was stolen. We all know the election was stolen. It was stolen. We don't have to worry about that anymore. We got to live under it. We don't need to discuss that. And finding one more thing to put out there to your group of people who will all, go, yeah, that's right, serves no purpose at all. Okay. So what I'm saying today is, like I said, buckle up and buckle down. Get down to the work. Understand that you can have an influence with your vote, your personal influences, and your money. And if you're willing to do that, if enough people are willing to do that, yes, I believe this whole thing can be turned around. But if enough aren't willing to do that, then no, it can't. And it all comes down to that. So make your personal decision on that and talk to your friends and try to influence those people around you. And we will see what happens. But that was just an answer to a couple of questions. And that's what I'm doing. I'm going to keep trying to influence because I don't believe in just sitting back and letting the monster gobble me up. Okay. All right. Well, you all have a good day. Remember that what I say over on integrative preparedness, and that is we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow, but also what I say here on American Reversion, and that is America needs a reversion, and it needs you to be a part of it. Okay. Y'all have a good day. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.